attended council hearings in person. You tuned into our televised proceedings on Channel 13. Now you have the chance to listen to us on the radio as we demystify our work and the people who do it. This is not a council hearing. This is Hearing the Council with your host, Josh Gibson.
Thank you, deep voice person with a funky backbeat. Indeed, this is not a council hearing. This is Hearing the Council. I'm your host, Josh Gibson. You can't have a government without a council, so you can't have a government radio station without a council show. This is it. I am happy to be joined again by at-large Councilmember Robert White, who's one of our most frequent visitors, so I'm extra grateful for having you here. I'm also always, I'm happy to follow you on social media, and we are fellow dads of daughters. Yep. And you had a really beautiful, I think it was a birthday message to one of your daughters the other day that was just like awesome, spot on. Like it was like a wedding toast in the making, like decades in it.
To the lucky survivor.
Yes. So a tip of the hat. I just remember that was really powerful.
Thank you. Yeah.
So anyway, what brings us here today is you've introduced a package of new public safety legislation known as Safer Today, Safer Tomorrow. And there's 3 bills in the package. We're going to go through them one by one. But the first question I wanted to ask you was, the council famously just passed a big public safety package after weeks of debate. And what makes your package different, and why was it not bundled with the rest?
Yeah, what makes my package, the most recent package, Safer Today, Safer Tomorrow, different is that it really focuses on prevention. Where are particularly young people falling into the gaps, and how do we do a better job of catching them before things go way off course? And I'll get into more specifics about those bills. But the public safety bill that the council passed a couple of weeks ago is really about response. And we have to make sure that when we talk about public safety, we're talking about response and prevention. One without the other still leaves you with a broken system. And so that was missing. My bill, so I've known for well over a year now that I was going to do some bills on response and some bills on prevention. But I have 2 legislative folks in my office outside of the committee, and there's only so quickly we can develop these bills, which we need to talk to people about, understand stories and experiences, and then draft the legislation in addition to everything else that's going on. So in a perfect world, all of our public safety bills would have been done last year. But in real life, they took time to do. But I want to give a big shout out to Lisa Wright in my office, my senior legislative assistant, and to Katie Whitehouse, my legislative director, who worked so hard on these bills. I will say, before we got to the prevention bills that we'll talk about at some length, we did focus on response bills. This is a time in the city where people are scared. Homicides and robberies are starting to go down, but they're really just starting to trend that way, and we hope that they'll hold. But people are feeling scared in a way that we haven't since really the late 90s. And when you have a problem, you got to figure out how to solve it, not just how do you respond to it with words. And so as my team and I went underneath these issues to understand what's happening, what we found was a 911 call center that is not working. So people are calling 911 in emergency and not getting an answer. Not enough people collecting evidence, which hampers prosecutions. And so we're seeing a lack of accountability in our system. And I don't want to see anybody locked up, but if you have a system that has no accountability, I think the issues spread. And so in a lot of ways as a city, I think we're missing the biggest issues. And that's really frustrating to me because you could have, a 100-year sentence for every crime and misdemeanor, but if no one's answering 911, and cases aren't getting prosecuted, you never get to the penalties. And so, like, when you think about what needs to be fixed, it's not the length of the sentences, it's the issues that prevent you from getting to sentencing in the first place. That stuff doesn't generate a lot of headlines, and so unfortunately, it doesn't usually get the right attention. And what you get left with are systems that remain broken.
And it's also, I mean, for the umpteenth time, I do not envy the role of a council member, because a couple of years back, the strong, nearly unanimous cry was for police reforms and for easing excessive incarceration that was not resulting in reductions in crime. You guys listened, you guys did what the public wanted. And maybe it's a different element of the public, or the public mood has changed because circumstances have changed. But Security C was, again, in response to a public demand. So it's not, you guys aren't of two minds. The public was of two minds, and there's two competing needs. So it's a challenge to walk that tightrope and keep the people of 2 years ago and the people of now happy.
Yeah, it is really hard. And you got to be thought when people feel afraid, they think about things differently. And when you are in a leadership position, you have to understand that, and you have to understand, how do you respond legitimately to the fears in front of people without doing things that you know are going to make them, their communities, and frankly, issues of racial bias and over incarceration worse in the long run. So I don't want to see a pendulum continue to swing. I want to see forward motion and real progress, and that requires you to understand where people are and to respond in a frame and in a way that they can understand it. And that's what I tried to do with my prevention bill. But again, the real issues are really not sexy, but they are there, and they are important. And I think we don't have to get into this backwards thinking of trying to redo the types of things we did in the 90s that resulted in over incarceration and a lot of fatherless communities.
Okay, so let's pivot. This podcast is the headquarters of non-sexy issues. So let's pivot right away to the three new bills, which are not sexy but are deeply meaningful and long-term thinking. So the first bill is Vocational Education for a New Generation Act. You see council members a lot of times doing acronyms that are fun, that spell something out. This is the first time I remember where it's bilingual, because it spells out benga, which means like come on in Spanish. But I think that's awesome. Extra credit to the legislature.
Thank you
for that. But why don't you talk about what this bill does?
Yeah. So one of the things from particularly Native Washingtonians, you will hear a lot and have for years, is people saying, why did we get away from vocational education? And the perception is, we used to have widely available vocational education for people who didn't intend to go to college but wanted to be in the workforce in a good paying career. The reality is a little different. We still have vocational education, but it is spread so thin because we've moved to career and technical education. So there are things that fall into this category now, like aeronautical engineering and other things that still require at least a 4-year degree, if not advanced degrees. Whereas residents want to see more traditional vocational education, things that right out of high school, you can get into a good paying job, whether it's electrician, plumbing, most of the building trades. But there are also some new IT related industries. So as I'm talking to young people across the city, they continue to tell me, one, they need to make money, and two, a lot of them are saying, I don't plan to go to college, but I don't see the prospect for making money. So if we're going to prevent young people from going down the wrong road, we've got to answer that question. And I believe we already had the answer back in the 70s and 80s. It was vocational education. Our young people could come out of high school this close to making $60,000, $70,000 if we create the right pipeline of jobs. So this bill requires us to do a massive expansion of vocational education. It requires all of those programs to result in industry certifications, so like real stuff that people can get jobs with. And it requires programs that don't require a college degree for entry into the careers. So what the result will be is a lot of our young people getting into careers, making good money, not going down the path of crime or violence. And that's exactly what we want to see for young people. So we believe this is something we can work with the administration on. We believe this is something that most DC residents want to see. So now our job is to get it going and get it into action.
Yeah, I mean, vocational education, I think, is another case of a pendulum, because the worry was that folks would get in a track, that folks that could have gone to college because of maybe how they looked or where they grew up would get shunted into a vocational educational track and would have their potential limited by that. So I feel like there was kind of an everyone can go to college, everyone deserves to go to college movement, which was good and well intentioned, but
Right.
the reality is we kind of swung too far away from vocational education, and now we're realizing not everyone, if people choose not to pursue a college degree, there are many lucrative, well-paying, interesting jobs they could do if they were educated a little differently.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, we have to be rooted in reality, and the reality is not everyone wants to go to college. And I think generationally, there are some shifts in the feeling of college, and rightfully so, because it costs a lot of money. In many cases, once you get a degree, you are still earning the same and sometimes less than people in the vocational trades. And when we look at sort of where we are in the point of history with respect to artificial intelligence, a lot of careers are changing, and a lot of careers we know today won't be viable careers in 5 years. But people who work with their hands are not going to lose their jobs or careers to artificial intelligence in the foreseeable future. So those also seem to be safer bets for a lot of people.
Yeah, AI is moving faster than robotics. So for a while, at least, things that may involve a physical action, we get to be in charge of still for a while.
That's right, for now.
For now, exactly. One of the pieces I appreciated with the bill you introduced was that it is demand based. It is looking very closely at not the jobs we think people should have, or even necessarily the jobs people want to have, the jobs that are available in the market and that can easily be filled if we provide well-trained students. Can you speak a little bit about that piece, that motivation?
Yeah, I want to make sure the jobs and careers that we're training people for are jobs and careers that are in demand, because I don't want to see any more people in the city going through programs and coming out the other end with no job prospects. That's demoralizing, and frankly, it is noticed by others who decide not to go down that path because they saw someone waste their time. The other thing we do in this bill and in all of these bills that's really important is we tie these to metrics and performance. So like we can't just keep creating a bunch of programs and hope they work. We have to know if they work. So with vocational education and mentoring, we're measuring, are the young people staying in school? When they finish, are they, how many of them, what percentage of them are getting industry certifications? Of those, which ones of them are getting into careers, and how many are staying in careers? So we want to make sure we know that what we're doing is working. That's an important shift we have to make in the city. Again, we have had so much money for so many years. I think we have lost the muscles of accountability and making sure these things are actually working. We need to be asking ourselves, like, what does success look like, and how do we measure success, so we know whether or not these ideas we're putting forward are working in real life? Because this is taxpayer money at the end of the day, and we've got to be very responsible with it.
Okay, so this bill has 11 co-sponsors and was referred to the committee of the whole. What do you think the prospects are for a hearing and for the bill to move forward in the short term?
I think there'll be a hearing relatively soon. I've spoken to the chair of the council about this bill, who I believe is a co-introducer of this bill. I know Chairman Mendelson, is very passionate about education and understands how pivotal education and careers are to everything in our city: health outcomes, safety, job prospects, poverty, and I think he understands that in the same way I do. So I believe we'll have a hearing on this bill relatively soon and hopefully be able to pass it after that.
Okay, so let's pivot to the second bill in your package, which is Youth Mentorship through Community Engagement Act, which is focused around mentorship. So why don't you talk a bit about that bill?
Yeah, so with this bill, my team and I spent a lot of time talking to young people to understand why they and their peers were going down the wrong road, and what many of them were experiencing. And what we kept hearing from young people was that they needed more guidance. Young people are navigating life that is very different than the life we navigated, in terms of having to go through a pandemic, mental health crises, violence in our city, and they need help. And when young people are saying we don't have enough help navigating the difficulties of life, we've got to listen. Some of the young people don't have at home the type of guidance that many of us were lucky and blessed to have. So when young people are saying they need guidance, again, we've got to listen. As a council member, I can't control everything, but I can create an opportunity for the 35,000 professional DC government employees to be a part of the solution here. So what we created to create really a vast number of mentors available to young people across the city is a leave opportunity for DC government employees to take a leave of 1 hour a week to mentor or tutor a young person in DC. In addition to that, we create a smaller professional mentoring program where these mentors are full-time, they are trauma informed, they understand all the resources that the city has to bear. And these are the mentors for young people who have faced some of the most severe adverse childhood experiences, traumas, neglect, to help them navigate before they make those really bad choices, go down the wrong road, to help them navigate. I believe that if we get mentors and other responsible adults into the lives of our young people, we're going to see young people making better decisions, as opposed to wagging our finger at people who, have frankly fallen through the cracks because we didn't create the right bridges for them. So this is a real opportunity for our city. People want to be part of the solution, and this gives them an opportunity to. I think there's more we can do, but everything can't be done from the council. So this is, I think, a really good place to start.
And I saw that the bill targets in particular youth who have experienced the legislative term is an adverse childhood experience, which it lists as violence, abuse, neglect, housing instability, substance abuse, mental illness. Sadly, isn't this many, if not most, of the children in the district? That it seems like, sadly, there's going to be a lot of demand for this mentorship.
Sadly, that is the reality for a lot of our young people. A lot of our young people have been abused, discarded. They have seen severe addiction in their families. These young people need help, and they need help as soon as possible, because their potential to overcome these challenges is great, but it diminishes every day and every year. We don't get them more resources. And, I could write a bill that promises a therapist and a social worker to every one of these young people, but the reality is we don't have those clinical professionals. They don't exist right now, which is why I work with the University of the District of Columbia to create the free Master's in Social Work program. But today, we don't have those things. So what can we do to best fill that gap for these young people so that they can be on the other side of this? And I think that is through this broader mentorship program or through our professional mentorship program. But I think we can help and save most of our young people. We can't save everybody, but I think we can save most people.
And I think I know what the answer to this question is, but are you, like you said, you're giving government employees leave under this legislation to do mentoring. Are you trying to role model for the private sector? Because even though we have a fair number of government employees, as we just talked about, a lot of youth are going to need this mentoring. In the past, I know government has been a role model, you know, in terms of giving people time off for voting, giving time off for parent-teacher conferences. Are you hoping this is something that will find a home in the private sector as well?
It is something I hope will find a home in the private sector. It's not the type of thing that we can legislate. If I were mayor, I'd issue a challenge to our private sector to join this mentoring effort. And I think we would be overcome with the response. But that's not my position right now. And I don't think the council can do that. We don't have that level of bully pulpit. So there's a way to start that. And to make sure we have many seasoned professionals pouring into the lives of young people.
And I think so many people, as they witness violence in the city and the youth struggling, want an opportunity to do anything. The worst feeling is feeling powerless and seeing things going on around you and feeling like you can't do anything about it. And I feel like this is a great little way to get a hook in the problem and to try to bring it to a stop.
Yeah, we live in an incredible city. Most people do want to be part of the solution. They don't often know where to plug in. And that's the question we have to answer is where can good people plug in? And the better we, government, is at answering that question, the further we're going to go as a city.
And this second bill, I'd have to say kudos on getting it referred to the Housing Committee.
Thank you.
So
I like the guy who chairs
how did you swing that? Now you control your own hearing destiny.
Talented legislative staff.
Well done. But so that one, I assume, will have a hearing soon.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so let's pivot to the third and final bill in the trio, Truancy Reduction for Student Success Act. Talk about that.
So one of the earliest and brightest indicators that a young person is going down the wrong road is truancy. Then when they stop showing up for school, that is the first time we should be intervening. And we have individual intervention protocol for students. But in terms of truancy by school, the council is getting a report once a year at the end of the school year. You can't direct resources to schools to head this off at the end of the school year. You can't learn in real time from schools that are doing well with student attendance. If you're just getting this report at the end of the year, I want us to be more nimble, to be more quick at intervening, and to make sure we're learning from the schools that have high attendance so that we are preventing truancy and not just measuring it.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of similar to the mentorship and vocational education. This is very metrics based, numbers based. Show me, you know, and to your point, I think if you get annual truancy numbers at the end of the school year, we all have summer slide. You know, it's harder to focus on schools during the summer. You know, it's if we're getting the data on a constant basis, we can react in real time. And it gives schools an opportunity to see better how anything they might be trying might be working.
That's right, and to get resources. Schools that no school wants to have high truancy levels, and for the schools that are struggling with that, we got to make sure they can get the resources they need.
And I mean, chronic truancy is defined as 10 or more unexcused absences a year, which is a lot. You know, I think even the strongest student with 10 days out of school would struggle to stay on top of learning.
That's right.
You're a student, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then when you're at school, you feel behind and you don't feel great about yourself, and you're just inclined to not go the next day.
That's right.
So you really need to break the cycle. This, I would assume there's not a ton of, you don't have the fiscal impact study yet, I'm guessing, but there's not a ton of expense to this. This is data that already exists in the system. It's just a matter of putting it on the webpage.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So this is something that should cost little to no money. But in terms of the benefit for us intervening as a prevention method, huge, incalculable.
Right. And this one has, I believe, 12 co-sponsors, also is in the committee of the whole.
Right.
So are you hoping, and I know the chairman for years has spoken out on truancy and has been doing what he can on truancy. So are you hoping for a hearing on this relatively quickly?
I am hoping for a hearing on this one relatively quickly. The chairman has been focused, as you said, on truancy, had a hearing relatively recently. And it's the truancy numbers in the district, many other places in the country too, are astoundingly high. And many people don't know what's causing it. So this is something we have to track much more closely and in real time.
And yeah, I mean, sometimes this is not something we're proud of. I mean, the truancy rate is incredibly high in the district, and it's, when that report comes out, it reflects so poorly on the job we're all doing. And this will, each month there'll be a smaller one of these spotlights coming on and saying,
Right.
you do better, you got to do better. And it's painful to be reminded of that. But if you're not reminded of it, it'll just keep happening.
That's right. And I think teachers and school leaders and parents, for the most part, are doing the best they can. But they need more help. And so we've got to get it to them.
Okay, so we've made it through the trio of bills. We're starting to run a little short on time, so we'll pivot to the fun round. And the latest fun round is, I want you to create the perfect council member out of traits from past and present colleagues. It's sort of a good Frankenstein. You're taking, there's got to be things you admire in all of your past and present colleagues, and it's like, wow, if I was making the perfect council, I would pull this part, this part, this part. So what are your thoughts, past and present colleagues, traits that you would like to cobble together into?
So Councilmember Vince Gray, attention to an understanding of detail, just deep respect for him as a legislator, historically incredibly talented, as an executive as well. But we're talking about council members. Former council member Fenty, I think, was particularly good about being in community and people knowing that he is in the community, which are not always the same thing. And so it does take a high degree of talent. The last thing I would say, this is something that I think is underappreciated about Chairman Mendelson. He is very often a shield for members. That is to say, I've seen him thrown under the bus. I don't often see him throw members under the bus, and I've seen him take heat and sort of known that he could get out of that heat by throwing other members under the bus and not doing that. And I respect that. I think it's a great leadership quality. So that's my Frankenstein council member.
And I always offer your colleagues the chance, if you needed to make a terrible council member, what traits would you pull? I always tend to speak of the chairman and throwing under the bus,
Yep.
Chairman Mendelson's fashion sets, what
Yep.
traits would, if any, and you can also refuse to answer, what negative traits past and present colleagues would you tongue in cheek put
So-
into a terrible, terrible council member.
The terrible council member is, despite any good intentions, trying to catch every drop ball and put out every fire. Will leave you running in circles with your hair on fire and not getting very far. And that was me in my first few years on the council. And so luckily, well, hopefully most of us are growing as we're doing. I try to grow deliberately so I can look back and smile and laugh at mistakes I've made earlier. But I can tell you there are ways that I was not and still am not a great council member, but I will also say I keep trying deliberately to get better.
Yeah, that is a very good and wise answer. Wise to not throw any of your your colleagues under the bus, but yeah, good to see the learning going on. So unfortunately, we're out of time. Again, I'm so grateful to you for participating in the show once again. Listeners, remember to subscribe to our podcast on SoundCloud or wherever you get your podcasts. Just search under Hearing the Council. Thanks again for joining us. Tune in next time. We're on DC Radio at 96.3 on your FM HD4 dial or at dcradio.gov. I'm Josh Gibson. This is not a council hearing. This is Hearing the Council. Thanks again, council member. Have a good day.
Thanks, Josh. You too.
Bye-bye.